Parents' divorce is a difficult and often traumatic situation for a child. But sometimes separation happens calmly, without scandals and mutual accusations. This is exactly what happened in one family when the girl was only 7 years old. She clearly remembers that day as if it were yesterday. Her favorite purple dress with butterflies, a teddy bear in her hands, and a calm conversation between parents in the living room. Mom and Dad explained that they would no longer be living together. No screaming or tantrums, like two adults who just fell out of love and decided to go their separate ways. The girl, perhaps too young to realize the depth of what was happening, did not cry. The parents divided the property equally. The mother got the house, the father moved into a new apartment, and the girl got 2 bedrooms. Custody was also divided equally, a week with Mom, a week with Dad. The father, as a responsible parent, took care of the financial well-being of his ex-wife and daughter. About a year after the divorce, Dad met a woman named Sarah. The first meeting took place in a small cafe. Sarah, with kind eyes and a warm smile, was sitting at a table with her son Tommy, who was enthusiastically playing with French fries. Sarah addressed the girl in a friendly manner, noting that she had heard a lot about her from her father. Tommy looked up from his plate and asked, with childlike directness, if she was going to be his sister. Sympathy was instantaneous, foreshadowing a new relationship and a change in life. What happened next? How did the relationships in the new family work out? Sarah behaved naturally and at ease, unlike some of Daddy's previous girlfriends, avoiding any playful pleasantries. Her sincerity was endearing. And Tommy, 3 years younger than me, became the real brother I never had. Around the same time, Mom started dating Richard. Their relationship developed rapidly, and he moved in with us quickly. I noticed changes in Mom's behavior. She became absent-minded, brooding, and often touched her stomach when she thought no one could see. Soon, they were married, with a modest ceremony at the town hall. 2 months later, my half-sister Emily was born. Standing in the hospital room, looking at that tiny pink bundle in my mom's arms, I felt redundant. Richard was bent over them, completely absorbed in the newborn and the young mother. I shuffled from foot to foot in the corner, feeling like an outsider to a family idol in which I had no place. That same year, Dad and Sarah's wedding took place. It was a different kind of celebration. Dad and Sarah made sure that Tommy and I felt like full participants in the festivities. Sarah even let me help her pick out her wedding dress. During the ceremony, Dad said touching vows not only to Sarah, but also to Tommy and me. "Today I gain not only a wife," he said with excitement in his voice, "but another child to love, and our wonderful children gain a large and close-knit family." That night, as Sarah was putting young Britney to bed in the guest room, she gently kissed the girl's forehead and said, "You know, Britney, I've always dreamed of having a daughter. Thank you for letting me be a part of your life." Britney hugged Sarah tightly, already realizing that despite her unconventional family situation, she was lucky to have at least one home where she felt truly her own. After Emily was born, life at Britney's mother's house underwent a transformation. There were no dramatic events, no harsh words or abuse. Rather, the little girl began to fade away, as if vanishing into thin air, becoming a ghost in her own home. Her mother left her job to devote herself completely to her home and family, and the whole world began to revolve around little Emily. At first, Britney tried to convince herself that this was normal. Surely an infant needs more attention. But as the months progressed, the forgetfulness and lapses began. First minor, then increasingly serious. Britney recalls standing in the rain outside the school, watching other children leave with their parents after a parent-teacher conference. Mrs. Johnson, her 4th-grade teacher, waited with her for nearly an hour before calling her mother. "Oh my God, was that today?" came her mother's worried voice through the phone receiver. "I'm so sorry, I was in a mommy and baby class with Emily. Can we reschedule?" The meeting was never rescheduled. That afternoon, Richard just picked Britney up after barely looking at her and talked about work all the way home on the phone. Britney's 10th birthday came. The girl woke up in anticipation of the holiday, ran down the stairs, expecting to at least hear congratulations from her mother. Instead, however, she found her cooing over Emily in the kitchen. "Mom," Britney began, stopping unhesitatingly at the doorway, "do you know what day it is today?" The woman looked up, absent-mindedly answering, "Tuesday." "Oh, I have to take Emily to the doctor." The girl's heart dropped. "It's my birthday," she uttered quietly. Oh, her mother's eyes widened. "Oh, Britney, I'm so sorry. We'll celebrate this weekend, okay? I have so much to do today with Emily's checkup." But the weekend passed, and no one ever brought up the birthday. Spending time at her father's house became much easier. Sarah always made sure Britney's favorite treats were in the pantry, and Tommy and the girl spent hours playing video games or doing homework together. Her father never missed a school event, and Sarah often joined him, taking pictures of Britney and glowing with pride as if she were her own daughter. Britney began to spend more and more time there. A few days turned into weeks, then months. Her mother hardly seemed to notice her absence. She was always busy with Emily, feeding her, playing with her, taking her to playgrounds. Richard, returning from work, would kiss Emily on the forehead and retire to his home office. Sometimes Britney wondered if they'd even notice her disappearance. After 6 months of actually staying with her father, he decided to make the situation official. One evening, he informed his son about the telephone conversation with his mother and his decision. The boy's permanent residence with him seemed logical, given the circumstances. Moreover, the father notified his ex-wife about the cessation of alimony payments, as he was now fully providing for the child. Not a few hours later, the mother appeared on the doorstep, filled with anxiety and tender words. She lamented how much she missed her son and enclosed him in an embrace that seemed like an eternity. The woman offered to go back to the original living arrangement, equally with each parent. The 12-year-old boy, old enough to see the sudden concern and promises of a better life behind it, understood the real reason: money. The child support his mother received was the real motivation behind her desire to get her son back. 5-year-old Emily never missed a chance to remind her of this. With a smug smile, she followed her half-brother around the house, dropping her sarcastic remarks when her mother and her new husband Richard were out of earshot. Once, when the boy was doing his homework in the kitchen, she stated that according to her father, he was not part of their family, but merely a guest. The boy tried to ignore her by focusing on math problems, but the girl continued. She reported that her parents loved her more, and recounted a nighttime conversation in which the stepfather complained about the boy's presence, and her mother reassured him, telling him that all he had to do was wait until the stepson came of age, when the payments would stop and he would leave. There was pain, of course, but she had learned to build impenetrable walls around it. She had her father and Sarah, who had shown her what true family love was. There was Tommy, who was closer to her than Emily's own sister could ever be. And yet, hearing your own mother essentially counting down the days until she no longer had to deal with you left deep scars on her soul. The years dragged agonizingly slow until graduation finally came. At the ceremony, she sat between her two families, her father, Sarah and Tommy on one side, and her mother, Richard and Emily, on the other. The feeling could be compared to being on the border of two different worlds. After the ceremony was over, her father hugged her tightly with the words, "We are so proud of you, princess." At the same time, her mother and Richard were already discussing her departure before she even left the school parking lot. "So, Richard," her mother pronounced, jingling her car keys, "have you started packing yet?" They didn't inquire about her college plans, didn't notice that she'd gotten into the business department on a partial scholarship, didn't even pretend to be interested in her future. The only question they cared about was when she would finally stop being a burden to them. 2 weeks later, the young man moved his belongings into his father's house. He was anxiously preparing for the conversation about financial aid for college, even though he was confident of his father's support. In the living room, nervously rubbing his admission letter in his hands, he began, "Dad, I've been accepted into the financial analyst program. They gave me a partial scholarship, but—" Before he could finish the sentence, his father and Sarah, exchanging meaningful smiles, interrupted him. "We've already taken care of everything, dear." Sarah pulled out a folder with those words. "We've been saving up for your education since you turned 8. The young man spent the entire summer working at the Silver Spoon Cafe, saving every dime he earned. Morning shifts allowed him to spend afternoons with his family. He went to the movies with Tommy. Sarah taught him the culinary wisdom of independent life in the dormitory, and his father, as always, was ready to give advice or just support in a difficult moment. The mother, however, never once asked about her daughter's plans, never visited her, and seemed to be completely unconcerned about the older child's impending departure for college. By then, however, the young man had given up expecting any involvement from her. The immersion into college life was swift and full of new acquaintances and impressions. The room in the dormitory was tiny but cozy, and the roommate, Jenny, quite friendly, although close friendship between them never started. Between her studies and her part-time job at the student cafe, she was desperately short of time, but calling her father and Sarah twice a week was a must. They visited her every chance they got, and Tommy, grumbling about having to carry the laundry basket, invariably brought her favorite homemade treats. Her mother never called, not once. His 19th birthday had passed without a single message from her. She shouldn't have checked her phone that day, shouldn't have gotten her hopes up, but old habits die hard. Late that night, she made the mistake of going to her mother's Facebook page. There were dozens of pictures of the perfect family on display. Her mother, Richard, and Emily at the beach, Emily's dance recital, family dinners, holiday celebrations. Each picture was carefully directed to showcase their happiness. Each caption spoke of family time and love. She, of course, was not in any of them. She had been cut out of a family portrait long ago. After the experience, the girl plunged headlong into her studies, determined to prove to everyone that she didn't need anyone's approval to succeed. Years flew by imperceptibly, and here she is already standing on the stage, receiving a diploma of financial analyst. Her father cheered as if she had won an Olympic medal. After graduation, Sarah offered her an interesting opportunity. Her brother, Mark, ran a successful investment firm in their hometown, and Sarah told him about her stepdaughter's academic achievements. The interview with Mark went well. He behaved professionally but kindly, reminding Sarah of his directness and ability to create a comfortable atmosphere. "Your references are impressive," he said, studying the resume, "but I must be frank. The fact that you're my sister's stepdaughter won't give you any privileges here. You'll have to prove yourself like everyone else." "I wouldn't have it any other way," replied the girl. She got the job and rented a small studio apartment not far from the office. It was a modest dwelling, but it was her own. She worked harder than ever before, taking on projects that others had turned down, staying late to perfect financial models, and developing comprehensive growth strategies for clients. The results spoke for themselves. The client portfolios under her management were showing astonishing growth. The company's revenues had increased dramatically, and Mark noticed it. He didn't single out favorites, but believed that good work should be rewarded. The bonuses and promotions she received were well-deserved, not because of family connections. The first thing, having received an annual bonus, the heroine decided to please her loved ones, her real family. Father, who used the same set of golf clubs for 15 years, received a new set. Sarah, always denying herself pleasures, got a weekend getaway to a spa. Tommy, still playing on a console left over from high school, had gotten the newest console. Watching them unwrapping their presents, genuinely happy and surprised, the heroine felt a deep satisfaction. She may have been cut from the same family photo album, but she had found her place in a much more precious environment. 5 years of hard work had resulted in a clear plan of action. Each month, a significant portion of her salary was set aside in a savings account. The real estate market was studied thoroughly in search of the perfect option. A dream house was imagined modest, but cozy, perhaps with a small garden. The main priority was an impressive down payment, so that the monthly mortgage payments remained affordable. But a sudden phone call turned everything upside down. The heroine was sitting at her desk, immersed in quarterly reports, when a number she hadn't seen in years popped up on her phone screen. "Britney, honey?" Her mother's voice was cloyingly sweet. "I've been thinking about you so much lately." The heroine nearly dropped her cup of coffee. 9 years of silence, and suddenly this. "How are you, Mom?" She tried to answer evenly, without emotion. "Oh, honey, I miss you so much. We all miss you. Why don't you come over for dinner this weekend? Emily's back from college, and Richard's cooking his famous roast beef." Curiosity took over. That Saturday afternoon, the car, a new Mercedes, emphasizing status and reliability, but without excessive luxury, brought the hero to the doorstep of his parents' house. Emily, who opened the door, gave him an appraising look, barely concealing her interest. "Nice car," she said instead of greeting him. The house remained the same furnishings, the same family photographs on the walls, and still not a single picture of the hero among them. His mother, rushing in with a hug, acted as if they had seen each other only yesterday. "Darling, you look superb. That suit suits you so well. Doesn't he look successful, Richard?" Richard, nodding, pushed back a chair for him. "We hear you're thriving in Mark's company. Word through family channels is that you're one of the top employees." Over dinner, his parents peppered the hero with questions about his job, his salary, his car. The mother kept mentioning the high cost of living, especially with Emily's college education. "What a beautiful watch you have," she remarked, reaching for his wrist. "Must be a fortune." The hero smiled politely. "It was a birthday present from my father and Sarah." Of course," the mother replied, and her smile became a little strained. "They've always spoiled you." That dinner was the beginning of a string of invitations. Suddenly, her mother wanted to be a part of her eldest daughter's life again. She began calling regularly, making unannounced visits to the apartment, bringing Emily with her, inviting her to family dinners. Emily, for her part, studied her sister's modest home with curiosity, eyeing everything with an appraising gaze. "Your place is kind of small," she once said. "I thought you were making a good living." To such remarks, the sister answered evasively, "I make enough." "But you're probably planning to move into something bigger soon, with your salary," the mother interjected. The daughter only smiled and turned the conversation to another topic. The sudden interest in her life made her vaguely uneasy. One Sunday afternoon, Emily dropped by her sister's house ostensibly to spend time together. The older sister was making coffee in the kitchen when Emily's astonished exclamation came from the living room. "Oh my God!" she exclaimed, looking up at her. "Oh my God!" she exclaimed, looking at the laptop screen. It turned out that her sister had forgotten to close the banking app after paying the bills. "Is that really all your savings?" With a quick step, the sister walked over to the laptop and slammed it shut. "It's not polite to look at other people's personal information, Emily," she remarked. Her sister ignored the remark. "Why are you saving up so much?" "For what?" The older sister hesitated for a moment, but decided it wouldn't be a big deal if she told. "I'm planning to buy a house soon. I want to put down a good down payment so the mortgage payments will be reasonable." Emily only nodded, but she could read a working thought in her eyes. She left shortly afterward, citing a meeting with friends. The very next day, her mother called, inviting her to dinner. As soon as she sat down at the table, the heroine felt something wrong. On the face of the mother read the same expression that foreshadowed a request to the father to increase child support. "Emily says you've saved up pretty well," the mother began, handing over the potatoes. "That's wonderful, dear. You know Emily's having a hard time paying for school right now, and she's going to need an apartment after graduation." The heroine took a silent bite of her portion. It would be so nice if her successful older sister could help her out, the mother continued, and you could clearly hear the hint in her voice. Family should help family, you know. The heroine put down her fork. I don't see where you're going with this, Mom. Oh, come on, Britney. The mother dismissed the feigned civility. You're obviously making good money. Emily needs help with the apartment, and you have plenty of savings. It would be the right thing to do. The heroine looked at her incredulously. Right? You want me to give Emily the money for a down payment on a house? Well, you already have a stable career, Richard interjected. Emily is just starting out. She needs more help. I don't have a stable career, Britney replied firmly. I'm working hard and saving up money to build my future. I'm not giving Emily my savings. Her mother's face darkened. So you're going to let your sister be poor while you sit on a pile of money yourself, after all we've done for you? Britney almost laughed. What have you done for me? Like what? Forgetting my birthdays, ignoring me for years, putting Emily above me? You're selfish, Richard muttered, avoiding her gaze. A real sister would want to help. And a real mother would take care of both daughters, Britney parried, getting up from the table. I'll take care of myself first. Emily is your responsibility, not mine. A deafening silence followed. Mother sat with her jaw tightly clenched, Richard staring angrily at his plate. Emily wasn't at this dinner, but Britney could imagine her reaction when her parents told her about this conversation. Poor Emily, whose selfish older sister didn't want to give her an apartment. 14 days after the ill-fated dinner, the heroine was due for a business trip to Singapore. Mark had entrusted her with an important presentation for a client, and she would be out of range most of the time due to time differences and a busy schedule. In a phone conversation with her mother, trying to keep a polite tone after a recent argument, she reported the 10-day absence and her inability to get in touch. Her mother reacted with unexpected interest, noting that the trip abroad was wonderful. The business trip was a success, but on her return, having barely turned off the airplane mode, the heroine found a flurry of bank notifications on her phone. With trembling in her hands, she looked through them. Transfers from the account, $1750. She felt dizzy. Rushing home, she opened her laptop and logged into the banking app. It revealed a large transfer to an unknown account, but the name of the recipient, Patricia Warren, her mother's name, left no doubt. She rushed to her parents' house as if possessed, clutching the screenshots from the banking app in her hand. Richard opened the door with a smug grin that made her blood boil. She stormed into the house, demanding her mother to answer. The mother, nonchalantly leafing through a magazine in the living room, inquired about the trip. The heroine showed her the phone with a question about the transfer. The mother pretended not to understand. At the persistent question about the transfer to her account, the mother finally put down her mask of innocence, smiled, and admitted to the transfer. She attributed it to the need to help Emily with the apartment, citing her daughter's lack of cooperation. When asked about breaking into the apartment, the mother demonstrated a copied key, citing a visit to the bathroom during one of her visits. The heroine was overcome with nausea. She demanded the money back, threatening the police. The mother laughed, stating that the daughter would not take such a step against her own mother and that she could save money again with a good job and no obligations. She added that Emily needed the money more and that an apartment had already been found. The heroine tried to object, but her mother interrupted her, mockingly asking what she would do. Send her own mother to jail? Richard grabbed her arm and dragged her toward the door, offering her one last chance to leave. The heroine repeated her demand for the money back. In response, the mother only mockingly waved goodbye. Richard pushed her out onto the porch and slammed the door in her face. That night, the police station was shrouded in silence. The author of the statement, sitting across from Detective Martinez, was filling out the form with a steady hand. Everything was documented. The unauthorized transfer of funds, screenshots of a banking app, text messages with his mother about a business trip. That same evening, a call came from Richard, his voice wavering between threatening and pleading. "You have to take the application back," he demanded. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to your mother? She's crying." The author of the statement hung up, leaving the mother alone with her tears. After all, she herself had shed many tears for her over the years. The legal process moved with unexpected speed. The evidence was irrefutable, and her mother's arrogant confession of theft only made it worse. In the courtroom, she played the part of the remorseful mother, tears streaming down her face as she vowed to return every penny. "I just wanted to help my youngest daughter," she sobbed, addressing the judge. "Motherly instincts clouded my judgment." The author of the statement could barely contain her laughter. Maternal instincts? Since when? The judge remained unfazed. "Mrs. Warren, your maternal instincts led you to commit premeditated theft and fraud against your other daughter. The only reason you will avoid jail time is because you have agreed to make full restitution and have no prior criminal record." Ms. Summers, Warren received probation and was ordered to pay restitution within 30 days. The author of the petition, for safety reasons, obtained a restraining order against approaching both her mother and Richard. Father and Sarah were by her side throughout this difficult period. They attended every court hearing, supporting by their silent presence, brought dinner when strength deserted them after grueling days, and never once rebuked the decision to allow their mother back into their lives. "You did the right thing," Sarah reassured her after the verdict. "They should have realized they couldn't use you anymore." Tommy, in his usual fashion, tried to defuse the situation. "Well, at least now you know for sure which family really loves you." And he was right. The boundaries became very clear. There remained those who were truly dear: the father, Sarah, Tommy, and even Mark, who had been incredibly supportive throughout the ordeal. And there were others: Mother, Richard, Emily, those who had shown their true selves to the fullest. 6 months passed. The money has returned to the account, earning interest while the search for a new home is underway. A charming 3-story colonial-style house with a fenced-in backyard, just 10 minutes from her father and Sarah's house, caught her eye. The mortgage paperwork is being processed, and this time the keys to the house will be in only one hand. The mother is still trying to reach out, through relatives or mutual acquaintances. She claims that she has changed, repents, and wants to make amends. But it's time to stop giving chances to those who see in another person only a source for their own benefit. Last night's dinner with a circle of loved ones gathered to celebrate the impending purchase of a house led the author to deep thoughts about the nature of family. Around the table at Sarah and her father's house, over jokes and discussion of housewarming plans, came a realization. Sometimes the family a person creates for themselves is more valuable than the one they were born into. Sometimes leaving a toxic relationship is the only way to keep your sanity and move forward. In as little as 2 weeks, the papers for the new house will be signed. Dad has enthusiastically volunteered to help paint the walls, and Sarah shares the links to furniture that she thinks will fit perfectly in the living room. This is how real family support should be manifested, in sincere love, care, and willingness to help, not in attempts to use loved ones for their own selfish purposes. As for the mother, Richard and Emily, let them continue to entertain themselves with the illusion of an ideal family and continue their manipulations. The author has something much more valuable: a real family, a clear conscience, and, very soon, a house, the key to which he alone will have the key.